Right, so a long Northern Hemisphere season. Well, I guess if you're one of the British and Irish Lions, um, a long Northern Hemisphere season, a long British and Irish Lions tour that started in Dublin against Argentina has come to an end with the British and Irish Lions. Of course, they'd already settled the matter of the series a week ago in Melbourne. Some would say in controversial, lucky circumstances, but in any case, the series is done. The Wallabies would have the final say in that series in what turned out to be a much elongated affair. In certainly, of course, there was the big 40-minute delay due to the presence of lightning thunderstorms within the stadium. Yeah, I mean, whoever says it's the rugby players is soft because of that has totally lost their marbles. But yeah, but the Wallabies deservedly won that series. I think even before the rain delay, with or without the delay, the Wallabies were clearly the superior team, and yeah, totally deserved to win. It was quite evident, with the British and Irish Lions. Most of them were pretty much pretty much mostly checked on their Qatar Airways flight back home to enjoy whatever's left of the off season and summer. I mean, certainly Finn Russell looked like he was probably trying to look for shiny Pokemon at Accor Stadium while he was in the sheds. That was hilarious, by the way. Yeah, I did remember that. Yeah, players aren't actually meant to have phones, simply because to prevent them like being involved with trying to put bets on the game or influence the outcome of games, that sort of thing. But it was it certainly made for a good source of memes. But look, there are a couple of things that I wanted to sort of talk about. Final thoughts on the tour, and yeah, but I guess one thing. Look, I think there have been a lot of punters comments out there saying that this British and Irish Lions team is not going to be remembered as one of the, not going to be remembered as one of the great ones, and that they played that I guess winning a series in Australia is pretty much like, winning a Grammy. Get that Simpsons reference in there, and look, I think one particular rugby expert, well, I guess he is a rugby expert in New Zealand, Jeff Wilson, was on the breakdown on Sunday night, was quite vocal in saying that, these British and Irish Lions were, very lucky to win that series against the Wallabies. And, and we've had a lot of pundits talking about, they played South Africa and New Zealand, they would have been, 3-0. Andy Farrell managed to, I saw one comment about Andy Farrell somehow managing to turn, two of the world's best teams in Ireland to Scotland into, something of a Frankenstein that just about beat a supposedly mediocre Wallabies team. And look, there are some comments out there. There is some merit in what they're saying, but I don't think the Lions are getting, and Andy Farrell getting the credit that they really deserve. I mean, look. At the end of the day, you can only play what's in front of you. And, the fact of the matter is Australian rugby is just not as strong as South Africa or New Zealand. We can't be comparing Australian rugby, we can't it's comparing apples and oranges when we always knew, the likes of the Western Force, and what the Waratahs, Reds, Brumbies without their Wallabies was always going to be a lot, not offer as much of a challenge as like the Bulls, the Stormers, the Highlanders, the Blues, or the Crusaders or Chiefs. Speaking of the Chiefs and the Crusaders, they were absolutely thrashed by the Lions, I recall, back in 2017. And you could tell, obviously, the Lions were meant to play the Melbourne Rebels, of course, before then the Rebels were kind of liquidated before the tour, so they got this New Zealand Australia Barbars team was meant to be, and that was a bit of an embarrassment. Let's not repeat that. But yeah, look, my point is, at the end of the day, you can only play what's you can only play what's in front of you, and B, you can only pick pick what you've got. And the fact is, this was a very strong Lions team, and I think during the the tour. You could. Someone argue, where was Josh Van der Fleer? Where was Henry Pollock? And by the way, speaking of Henry Pollock, I think that's a bit of a response to people saying Andy Farrell was was picking his, was biased in his selections, only picking his son and his fellow Englishman when he's actually part Irish. I think this was when you saw every test site that was put out, you had it sort of made sense, and the selections certainly more than justify themselves. Look, Earl was a good example. His form hadn't been good prior to the tour, and Ty Furlong, another example, had sort of been out with a long-term injury. There were question marks whether he recreated his form, but yeah, at the end of the day, on the test night, they all delivered. So, look, the goals to win the series, they achieved that. That was all they needed to do. I mean, a 3-0 would have been nice, but, I think ultimately, it is quite tough when you turn up for a dead rubber like that, and then you see the conditions on Saturday night, and it was absolutely atrocious, and it's credit to both teams that they, and the fans to turn out, because it was absolutely atrocious. Not just to stay, and particularly when you think they actually had to stay an extra hour to, for the game to finish. So look, I mean, whether this team, it's irrelevant whether this Lions team would have beaten the All Blacks or the Springboks. I mean, at the end of the day, Andy Farrell has to pick a team that's suitable, horses for courses. And I'm pretty certain if they were playing the All Blacks or the Springboks, that'd be a totally different team. So I don't think this is going to be predictive of what's going to happen in 4 years' time when the British and Irish Lions tour New Zealand. Because it's simply going to be a different. It's going to be a completely different lineup. It's going to be, you're going to have different All Blacks, different Lions players, that sort of thing. So this tour is done. It's in the record books. We just wait for we'll just have to wait another 4 years for the next tour. And I guess the question is are the Wallabies back, as some Australian commentator says it? Hard to say. Look, I mean, we've seen so many dawns which have ultimately come false dawns. People would like to say so. One thing I can say though, the performances were certainly encouraging. I mean, there are certain players who probably might have played themselves out of the future of the Wallabies. There's certain players who certainly have strengthened their case. Peach, for example, I think he could. Maybe it's because he's giving me Sterling. His baldness is giving Sterling Mortlock vibes. But I think he could be the future a future midfielder along with Jossa Swahili. Jorgensen looks like a star. I guess there's still question marks about first five. I think when Noah Policio comes back from injury, he might very well take Tom Liner's position. But look, there's certainly things to look up for the Australian rugby team, although Australian rugby fans. But again, we've been through this, so there's a bit of cautious optimism. Having said that, of course, there is a Rugby World Cup in Australia in 2 years' time, and if we're going by this, I think the Wallabies are tracking nicely, even if they're not, it's a shame they're not going to have Joe Schmidt to take them to the Rugby World Cup. So a lot of positives, and look, certainly commercially and financially, this has been a really successful tour for the Wallabies. And I think certainly Australian rugby, Phil Wall will be thrilled with the success. This has been a very, very successful tour. It's certainly put rugby union back in the spotlight in a country that's pretty much been distracted with AFL and NRL in recent times, and even the A-League and this. So but look, what are your thoughts? How do you rate this British and Irish Lions team, and how do you rate this Wallabies team? And and of course, if you like this video, feel free to like and don't forget to subscribe.